Just imagine it's what we call paperwork day. There's another term for it on your military base. You've just had your chow, you're talking to people, and you're doing what is considered an ordinary thing. That was what the day was like at Fort Hood until it wasn't. Patrick Zeigler Jr. joins us. The name of his book, Both Ends of the Barrel: From the Troop Surge to Fort Hood, a dozen years in the global war. Patrick, thank you for your service, and we are honored to have you here on Author's Corner on America Tonight with me, Kate Delaney. Take us through that day. What was that like?
Yeah, that day I was on Fort Hood and I was just a normal day. I was actually in charge of a section of troopers and went to PT formation 6:30, and then I was pretty much 9 o'clock started business. I had to do paperwork. It's called SRP, Soldier Readiness Processing, and everybody has to do it when they leave for and when they come back from overseas deployments. And so that was the eighth time I'd been doing this procedure. And I spent all morning shuffling through the stations, signing paperwork and checking the blocks, and pretty boring and mundane type of thing. Same thing that I've always done. And then I went to lunch about 11:30 and went and had some good food, Hawaiian food, actually, plate lunch, and came back and I decided I was going to take the afternoon off. But instead of, for some reason, I was thinking I was going to take the rest of the day off, but then I ended up going right back to where I was supposed to be to finish up my paperwork. And about 1:30 is when the good Dr. Hassan stood up and shouted Allah Akbar at the top of his lungs. And he really did look like a lone wolf howling at the moon when he did it. And then I was probably about 12 feet away, and he spun around to face me and raised his pistol and pointed it at my face, hit me in the side of the head, and that knocked me out of my chair. I had no idea what was happening, but I started crawling, and he decided that wasn't enough, so he came up and shot me 3 more times.
Wow. That
Yeah,
happens, and then you're just, I mean, somebody pulled you out, right? Somebody pulled you out of the situation.
yeah. I was crawling the whole time trying to get out of there, and somebody grabbed me and pulled me out back at the back door of the building, and we were sitting on the grass, and somebody was basically holding my brains in, and the ambulance showed up. They were quick, but it doesn't feel quick when you're bleeding like that. So, anyways, yeah, I hopped back there. I let the head paramedic that day. She has a chapter in the book to describe the third person vantage point. She was very good at writing her section, and she's a good friend now. It's amazing how you make friends out of something so horrible, but that happens a lot. And I got to the ER on Fort Hood, and I was just trying to talk to one of the doctors who also happened to be a major and tell him what the heck happened. And I told him it was a soldier in uniform that was shot us, and they had no idea where he was. So probably about an hour later or less, I was sedated immediately, and they flew me out by airlifted to Temple, Texas, which is 40 miles east, Scott and White Hospital, and there I stayed. Actually, I ended up having all of my brain surgeries there over the next year, and took about took about 11 months inpatient treatment, and then about 6 years of outpatient rehabilitation. And so here I am living on the beach. Life is good. I, I was sitting on the beach and I just kind of like wondering what my purpose was in life now that I was kind of retired and out of that scene and everything. And so this is the 14-year anniversary, and I just figured that I needed to tell the story, not just for me, but for everybody who died that day. And then I elaborated, and I spent several years writing about my 2 tours in Iraq and all of my friends that we lost over there, how they were, who they were, and how it was that we lost them. And nobody would have known those stories if I hadn't put them down on paper.
So in the
That,
book, people will hear those stories because, as you say, you feel honored to have the opportunity to memorialize the 13 victims who died at Fort Hood on November 5th, 2009, as well as your brothers in arms on those 2 tours who lost their lives overseas. So you're giving life to them in a sense.
yeah, exactly. I mean, there's 4,500 men who and women who died in Iraq alone, not to mention Afghanistan. And it's just so many stories and so many people that really mattered. Like they were the top of the crop of our nation. Top 1%. They that volunteered and risked their lives. And just a lot of people don't realize that there's so many stories like mine and my friends are out there, thousands and thousands. And then there's the people like me who are still in need of certain things. And I mean, Uncle Sam, thankfully, he takes good care of me, but um, I can't drive. That's probably the worst part about getting shot in the head is my vision. My optic nerve was severed, and I can't see well enough to drive. So that makes things a lot harder. Thank God for Uber and the blessing in disguise that was COVID in my world, that all the delivery services and industry that came out of that. So I get things done, and I can get around as much as I need. I'm on the plane year round. I take the train down to South Florida, and I made it. So
Yeah, and again, we'll tell everybody the name of your book is Both Ends of the Barrel: From the Troop Surge to Fort Hood, a Dozen Years in the Global War. And you talk about too, look, you're not looking for sympathy, you're not crying the blues. You mentioned it. Wow, you showed me, for people listening, he showed me his beautiful view, proud of that, and in Florida, and you should be. And you say your goal is dedicated, your life is dedicated to helping others overcome PTSD from their traumatic experiences. So tell us more about that and the book, because it is that tool.
yeah, I think that just reading that experience that I had and understanding what happened at Fort Hood that day would help. That'll open a lot of people's eyes to the actual dangers of serving in a conflict like we're currently in, and maybe um, inspire somebody to tell their own stories. Maybe, I hope, and whether they were military or not, But mostly, I just want people to come away with the fact that freedom's not free. It's a cliche, but it's true. And I dedicated this book to my son, and I wanted him to know what it takes to keep this country free, and how many people had to suffer and die and pay for his freedom. So that's one major thing. And then I share a lot of stories in the book about the nonprofits that have helped me recover throughout my recovery for the last 14 years. I've had so many organizations and people that just step up, and they're Americans and they just want to do whatever they can. And So I've had lots of great experiences, and I'm looking forward to hopefully paying back some of that great stuff that positivity that came out of it. I want to pay it forward, or at least continue working with some of the organizations that I have been. A lot of good stuff came out of one of the worst things that ever happened to me. So
Yeah, yeah, and you were the most critically wounded survivor of the Fort Hood terrorist massacre. Every day, do you feel grateful that you're alive?
yes, ma'am. I always give thanks morning and the evening, just because I shouldn't be here, and I know that. And everybody says you have a reason to be here, and I understand that. I think this book was one of the main reasons. I also had my son 3 years after I was shot in the head. So the doctors, they always lie and say you're never going to be able to do that. I think they do it as a psychological reverse psychology. You can't do that. So I would always prove them wrong. And boom, my son is 11 years old now. So
Wow, good for you. And your story is something that I think everybody should read. It is powerful, and you're right, it can help anyone, both ends of the barrel. From the troop surge to Fort Hood, a dozen years in the global war. Patrick Zeigler, you can get his book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Thanks so much for sharing your story.
thank you, Kate.
Visit www.greatwritersmedia.com. Email us at info@greatwritersmedia.com. Call us at 877-600-5469. Subscribe now.